Welcome to episode 9 of Josh and Reid Are Parents. Today, the guys discuss how parents face the fear of failure and ways to create resilience in our kids and ourselves. Hey, you should follow us on Instagram. We're doing some fun things over there.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 9 of Josh and Reid Are Parents. I'm Reid.
I'm Josh.
And we're parents.
We're parents.
And we have done 8 of these. This is episode 9, and we are excited that you're here with us and that we're going to have a conversation today building off of our last one that we had, diving in a little bit more about fear and the ways that as a parent we just have so many different variations of fear and anxiety and those sorts of things, and how we might be able to carry those things well. Before we jump in, a couple things to make you aware of. We are starting a Patreon, which is a way for you to support the podcast. The only level we have right now, because we are basic, the only level we have right now is like $5 a month if you want, or actually I think you can choose your own if you want to give less, but like any amount that you want to help like keep this thing alive is really would be so kind, and we will be so thankful. Kind. And at some point, but is in the middle of like a youth group summer that I'm in the middle of right now, at some point we'll build that thing out and do other levels and other things that most other, I don't know, Patreon type folks do. I don't know, like hangouts with us or like other special posts and videos and those sorts of things that are behind the paywall. To be honest, guys, we're both millennials. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, but we'll figure it out. And it's going to be great. And if you're not up for giving the Patreon, totally fine. If you like this and you want us to keep like making them, like, subscribe, comment, and then share with somebody. And then the super helpful thing is on Spotify or Apple Music or Apple Podcasts is to like give that 5-star review, and that's super duper helpful. So so let's jump in. Josh, how's it going over there?
We're good, man. I know that youth group summers are pretty wild. I think you were telling me last night that like youth group is a little different than it used to be, but like it's still pretty wild, man. It's still pretty go time. I can imagine you guys are hitting it hard, right?
Yeah, we are. We're it's just high octane is the best phrase I can think of off.
When I think of Reid, it's high octane. It's intensity. Cooking with gas is what we talk about.
Yeah.
The way that we're working on things over here. So June in the Thames household is full of 10U All-Star baseball. Baseball's always kind of a part of our life. Jonas is a big athlete and loves baseball the most. He likes soccer. He likes flag football. We're working on basketball, man. It's not his favorite. Working on.
Come on, Joe.
But anyway, June is like the time of All-Stars, which means like higher level, more intense, way hotter. We go to these tournaments every weekend. Like some of you guys out there know very well, like the world of travel baseball. We're just dipping our toes into that. And so that's what we've been doing. And of course, because this is who I am, I'm the coach. I'm the head coach of our 10U All-Star baseball team at Peachtree Ridge. Coach Thames in the house. And man, we've had just really, really good time. We have great kids. Jonas is really, really part of it. It's really fun. Like our families are great. But it's a lot, man. And it's a lot. And the thing about it is like, it's like a step up of the amount of pressure and intensity that it was or like the rec level, you know? Yeah. Everyone's better, you know, everyone's like really good, and like pitchers are really good. And like, if you hit the ball in rec league, you usually get on base. Here, you got to hit it like hard enough to get it past people. You know, it's just like the whole new thing. And so what I deal with and what my kiddos are working through right now, as they're like mostly 9-year-olds heading into 10-year-olds, is like how to manage failure, because baseball and most sports and most things we do in life in general, like kind of demands management of failure. And I think that connects a lot to like kind of the discussion we want to have today. And what we've been having is, you know, how do we manage failure? How do we manage failure as parents? How do we manage our failure, like our kids' failure? And so like really circling around this idea of the fear of failure in ourselves and our kids, and like, how do we manage that? I don't know, Reid, as you think about those things, think about like how we like approach those things, how, like what hits you?
The first thing that hits me when I think about it is that I think about it a lot like we were just talking about fear in general last week, that the fears need to be validated. Like, I think there's something to actually validating the fact that like failure is real. Yeah. And I think that for me is like the first thing I kind of wrestle with, of like how do I allow my child to to fail, what kind of failure is helpful, and what does that actually mean? That's a question we're going to talk about in a minute. And then also
Sure.
like how do I scaffold that in such a way where he or she can like walk through it, and to come out the other side knowing that failure is a part of life, but it's not final.
Right.
It's not the ultimate. It doesn't have the ultimate say on even that day, or especially moving forward, what happens next. And so, so I think of failure as a great tool for teaching, but it's also, as a parent, super scary to be like, oh man, because like any little failure now is already hard.
Right.
And so like as that amplifies up into the teenage years, like what's it like to then protect my kid without it being like overbearing, those sorts of things. So those are my initial reactions. What about you? Like, what are you thinking about?
It's so nuanced, right? There's so many different, like, it's because it's different when they're 5 and when they're 10, but there's also similarity. There's so many different levels in it. I think the place I start inside of this is, again, always with parents, always with me, right? And so a lot of times the way parents come into this is like, hey, I don't know how to deal with my kid's failure. I don't know which failure is appropriate. Well, how much do I let him fail? How much do I... The place we start is always with us, and how are we managing the fear of our failure and the fear of our kids' failure, right?
Right.
And so like we can get really quickly, and obviously like most of us that like are intentionally trying to be good parents can recognize, you know, if I am demanding my kid succeed for me in all of these moments and like make me feel good about myself and be the super duper all-star baseball player so I can feel good about myself, we can recognize that like that's pretty jacked up. Like that's not how we would ever approach
it. Like Jamie
kids.
Tartt's dad.
Right.
From Ted
That's
Lasso.
exactly right. Right.
Yeah.
Like just like horribly abusive and mean to our kids.
Yeah.
But there's levels below that where like sometimes I don't know if I'm fully honest with myself, and I wonder if other parents kind of think through this, which is like, no, I fear that I will look like I don't know what I'm doing, or I will look like I'm not strong enough or sturdy enough, or that I'm not impressive enough. Like if he doesn't perform well, and if I'm in that mode, I'm in that thought processing, I do not parent well. I parent from anger and frustration and fear and hurt, instead of I'm the adult, I can handle it. Like I'm not worried about his failure. We're going to have guidance, and like it's a very, very different posture. And I think a lot of parents, that's the place we probably need to begin, is like, what are you afraid of about your kid? Moving forward. I don't know, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, for sure. And so like specifically like Haidt's book that just came out with like the anxious generation and technology. It's like for our parents that are trying to navigate a healthy structure and scaffolding, how to introduce my child to technology without it just being like a zero-sum game, which is kind of how it feels a little bit of the conversation I see a lot right now, is like, well, you just take it all away. It's like, well, at some point they're going to get it, whether or not it's your choice anymore as the parent. And so like, what does it look like then as the parent to like, that's I think a pretty good example of something that is scary. Both like that I might fail at it, and also my child might fail in that avenue, in that world of technology of like stuff on the internet is weird. And so what does it look like to scaffold that for my kid?
I think some of this is really, again, this is where the nuance comes in. Because I do think a lot of times the way that we do one of two things here, and I don't know where our parents are that are listening, but either it's kind of head in the sand, like we don't really have to worry about that too much, like it's not that big a deal, people are kind of alarmist, versus this is like this generation is miserable and terrible, they're growing up with technology they shouldn't have, and we need to be terrified and live in the country by ourselves and never interact with the grid and all that kind of like there's a spectrum there that I think we have to find a middle ground in. And I also think too, and I think this is really hard, is that I think that there are different ways of approaching this at different ages and at different stages. Right. So the question that I'm trying to always answer is, what failures does my kid need to deal with and manage so they can learn and grow and develop an understanding of self and the world? And what failures do I need to keep them from so they don't get hurt, to the point where it really damages them? Does that make sense? Right. And I think that's a really, really hard discussion. And I think it's important for us to understand the nuance in it and recognize that it's different between 5 and 10. And then it's different between 5 and 12 and 13. And then it's different from 14 to 18. Does that hit right there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think reflecting on my own life, like just using myself as a case study,
Right.
where like I was the kid, I was interested in computers, interested in cell phones, I was interested in technology. Some of my siblings were like, I don't care. Like they just wanted to just like call their friends and stuff. But like I was like, oh man, look how cool this stuff is. You know, like I was pretty interested in it. You know, like some boneheaded stuff where like you're like, not that my parents were like intentionally being like head in the sand, like you said, but it was kind of like, well, it's, I don't know, it's the technology. So like, we got the computer and he has the cell phone. So it's like what is it? Like building that scaffolding where you partner with your child to say like, hey, look, as you grow and we, so like for us, like Henry has a tablet right now. It's one of those like Amazon kid tablets that's like super shut down. Like he can't add or take anything from it. And so like, as like, I feel I'm like on that thing, I'm like, okay, I feel fine about that. Because I know what he can see, I know what he can do. And I trust him to like, when I ask him to put it away, that it gets put away, like those sorts of things. Like that right now, I think that's the battle we're fighting is like, hey, when it's time to turn it off, it's time to turn it off.
Sure. That's hard, but sure.
And I think that's like a good first level of the scaffolding of like, actually when it's time to put it away, it needs to be put away. And we're gonna be together now. And like, I think that's something that even now, like as an adult, like I'm grabbing myself, I can hold it up to the classic, like point of the cell phone thing. Like Henry, I've told Henry, he can look at me and say, Dad, I'm more important than your phone.
That's good.
Because I still like I just said, like as a I didn't have like, that wasn't something we really knew how to like do.
Yeah.
There was no like, hey, here's how you should scaffold this for your kids with technology. Because it was all new. So it was just the Wild West of like, like, yeah, like I'm sitting here playing Snake on my phone for like 8 hours.
Sure. Why?
I don't know how long it actually was. It was like forever. It was like, this is insane. But as the parent, the awareness of like, I might not be modeling this well.
Right.
And so how do I then scaffold for him, like doing it well, even when I struggle with it, and use myself in that to be like, hey man, I'm not great at this.
Yeah.
And I'm it's something I'm failing at and getting better at. I'm trying to learn.
Right. I didn't have great understanding of this when I was your age, and I want to do better for you as you move forward. I think anyone in our generation really understood it as we were moving forward. And so, the other thing that reminds me of, Reid, is this idea that what it also demands of us in those moments is like an awareness of like kind of what the threats actually are, right? Like, and I think that can be really hard for people because you can go too far or too little in that. But I think even the harder thing, which I think can be like a really hard and like helpful thing for us to call each other to as parents and as people that are like in community with each other, is that like there also is moments where we have to lean in as parents and talk to our kids about the scary things that we need to stay away from, instead of just being like, you just stay away from it, we're not going to deal with that. And that just trying to like deal with my fear that way, right? Instead of saying like, hey, we need to have conversations about bodies. We need to have conversations about pornography. We need to have conversations about addiction. We need to talk about it in a way that's productive and on level and not like 75 hours long, but like, you need to understand that these things are there and we have to talk about it productively. And what it demands of parents is that we have to like prepare for that. We have to deal with the awkwardness. We have to deal with, being aware of our own things that we're unsure about, like we have to be vulnerable in that. And I think that that's hard for a lot of parents. What I'd rather do is just be like, hey, just don't do it. No. And like, there's a time for that, but there's also like you have to do more, I think.
And I think that's where I struggle is sometimes I throw up a wall thinking it's a boundary.
Yeah.
And I misappropriate, like I misunderstand the difference between a wall and a boundary.
Yeah.
And so as we think about these things and we try our best to do things that are helpful for our kids to learn and grow. And as a parent, when I do fail and I throw up a wall instead of a boundary, I think what I hear you saying is like the humility to then say, actually, I'm going to tear that wall down. That was not, I didn't say that right. I didn't do that right. And I want to tear down and start over. And I hope you can let me do that. Because I think what we actually need is a way healthier boundary for you that is going to shift and move over time, because boundaries might need to shift and move for them to be helpful in the long run. So like, what's the difference between a wall and a boundary in this field of like fear of failure and specifically around the technology thing?
That's a good question, dude. I think the way that I'd approach that was this idea of alignment, right? Of being on their team instead of their opponent. Now, when people hear that a lot, when people hear that, what they think is like, oh, you're just going to be doing what they want. No. I'm still the one holding all the boundaries.
Yeah.
Right. But what I do is I do it from a place that I'm with them. And a lot of times there's like the way that we've had, like, it's because we saw our parents do this, or because we don't know how to do it another way, or like, I'm right here with them. Like this is what I struggle with too, with Jonas, is I feel as though I have to be an opponent, or even like I have to be the big bad that has to stop him from these bad things. And there are times when I do have to be strong, and I do have to, like, you can't go past here because it's unsafe, or it's going to hurt others or yourself. Right. But I still think I can do it if I have humility and intentionality and a lot of proactivity. I think I can do it from on his side. Right. So this is when I think about boundaries, I think about it like this. I really, really want to set up, especially for my 9-year-old that has like fairly extreme ADHD. I really want him to begin to see that his choices trigger responses that are automatic, and that it's him. They don't trigger my responses or my reactivity. We've already talked about it. Every single time you throw your controller when you get mad, bud, at the video game, we take it away. We don't play it again for a day. Yeah. And like, it's not because it's not me. I'm not doing that to you. That's something that you've made that choice, and that hits. We can't throw things when we're mad. That's the boundary. Right? So it's not a wall. It's not a, you will not, and I will not have it. It is, buddy, I hate that you lost that for a day, but we can't have it. And like, I'm hurting with you, and I'm bummed out for you, but like, we really aren't going to do it tomorrow. And so then we have to work through that, and there's anger, and I have to be sturdy enough and strong enough to be like, it's okay if you're mad. You can be mad, but you can't throw. And we have to learn that. And so that's what it is. I think can I be aligned with him? Can I be strong? Can I make sure that he understands the boundaries beforehand? And then can we learn that? Yeah. I think that's a helpful way of approaching it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I like that like, because the wall means that I'm on the other side of it, being like,
right.
And then it's a domineering thing. And a domination thing where I'm like speaking down to you instead of on your level, saying like, man, like we're on the same team, and like it's that we don't treat anything like that. I know you love this game, but like, we're going to take it away for a little while. Because that's what happens when we make that choice.
All right. And really, really leaning into this idea. So I think this is a thing too, when we talk about fears. If I can be strong enough and mature enough and adult enough to be able to not parent him through my fear, I gotta be honest with you. Whenever he gets mad at a game and he throws his controller, the fear that rises in me is that this kid's out of control. This kid is not like inhibiting himself correctly. Like, and this is gonna be bad for the future. Other people are gonna see him do that. Like, those are all the things that hit me, like, just like instinctually, right? If I can find ways to find maturity on the other side of that says like, I'm not parenting him through that. I'm parenting him through boundaries and purpose and choices. Then I think I have a better shot of actually like helping him, guide him towards and mold him towards the kind of person he needs to be.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So when I'm thinking about like allowing him to fail at things like that, like that's a failure, right? On one, like he's, right. I failed to treat it the way that we said we're going to treat it. So that's what happens. Is the consequence. That's the boundary. So that's something that he can fail at, and it's like, yeah, that's just what happens. And there's other things that, as the parent, I need to protect him from. And what I don't know how to phrase the question. How do I with wisdom decipher which things I need to protect him from and which things I need to allow my child to fail at? And like you said earlier, it might be age, it might be all these things, but like,
yeah,
it feels like this ambiguous like thing that I'm just gonna like, I don't know. Like for me, I feel like the fear of failure is really connected to that, where it's like I'm jumping into a pool of this like shaving cream is just going to envelop me, and I'm like, oh, here we go. This is it. It's over.
It's over.
I failed. I failed forever. I'm going to be stuck at the bottom of this pit forever because I've like either like overprotected and I'm like holding this thing so tight, and I have to be,
Here's I just want you to know, like, I'm with you there. I don't know if I'm expert here level at this at all, but like, I'd love to bounce a couple ideas off of you, because I think the place that we start inside of this, I think the place I want to start inside of this, Reid, is like thinking about what is something that, like a failure. I remember Melanie talked about this when she was on with us.
Yeah.
A failure that they'll learn from and they'll understand that this is a consequence I don't want to have next time. Right? Like I want to make sure, versus something that they can't manage themselves. Right? Like versus something where they're in a situation that they don't have the capacity to manage that failure. I think I think that's different for individual people, right? But that's why I think you and I creating this podcast is like fraught with peril, because we're talking about generalities and we need to talk about individual things.
That's right.
But I think here's the thing that I'm really interested in. What are things that we can use as process? Like, can we process things well and like find good processes that will help us understand, like, hey, this is how we understand that this is a really bad choice, and this is how we understand this is something that we're protected from. Like, this is something that like I can't let you do. I don't know. Like, I think that's the place I start. Is like, can I learn something from it? Can they understand something from it as a kid? Or is this something that they can't manage? I don't know. I wonder how you think about that.
It's like you said this last night, so this is your thing, but the ability to move through process into what'd you call it, like results based, where it's like as we grow, as we've built the scaffolding, as they've walked up it, as they're feeling, they've started to like understand the concept of whatever the thing is that we're talking about. That we move into, whether it's grades or whatever else, we move into then like relinquishing a lot of the control or the overseeing model into a I trust you model. I'm still here for you. I still am 100% on your team, and moving into that, like that open-handedness of parenting as they get older.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I think grades are like a really good place to start. I think that's where a lot of parents struggle. Yeah. So the question is here, like, oh, they just need to fail, and like then they'll learn that. And I just wonder, like, maybe what we're not doing, especially in the younger grades, like elementary and middle school, even early high school, what we're not doing there is we're not results based yet. Right? What we're there is we're looking at, like, are you meeting process goals? Right. And then when do you, like, so the question I would send to you is like, first of all, what does that process goal like look like, and why is that helpful? And then secondly, like, when do you begin to move towards, okay, we can go towards results based and like that? Like, how do you see the difference between the two?
Yeah, as a teacher, I always thought about it like, I can't grade what I don't have. Right. So like the first process and the process based, so like, are you just turning in the work? Yeah. And then if you are, then we can talk about like what and how and how we might turn in better work and learn and grow in that area. Because if you're turning in all the work and you still have a low grade, okay, well, that's a different conversation. And I have a D because I've only turned in 60% of the work, and so I have a 60% grade. Like, well, that makes total sense to me. You should
have a new process we need to go towards, right?
We need to go back to the process and say, well, actually at night we need to set aside 30 minutes or an hour or whatever age might determine the time frame. But like, where I'm not going to sit there and hover over you, but I am going to we're going to have check-ins where I'm going to like make sure the work is actually done. I'm not going to check it for perfection or anything else, but like without it becoming this like, and that's where I struggle. This is why I'm like always like using the image of like a white knuckling thing. Like, how do I don't know how to do that. I struggle with how to do that without it becoming me being overbearing and helicoptering over them. Yeah. While also knowing they're not ready to be released to just like, hey, whatever you get. Sit in it. Sit in the D-. Sorry.
Yeah. And like when I'm 14, like I don't care about a D-.
Yeah, cool.
Whatever. I don't care.
Can I still play sports? Can I still be in the thing? Like, no.
Yeah. And I think it's a good question. I think the place where I go is if they know for sure and you're very clear and direct and concrete, especially at the younger grades, about what the standard and what the expectation actually is. You cannot do other things until this is done. And so it might be, Reid, that like, hey, I want to step back and we're not going to do anything. But sometimes some kids, I got to sit here with you and we got to do this together until you're done. right? And then what I think a lot of parents fear, like, but they're never going to figure this out on their own. They need to do it. Like, no. Just let's build the skill, and then let's see if they develop next year and the year after, right? Like, let's not be afraid of these things in the future, you know?
Yeah, I think that's something that fear does to me as a parent, is it makes me short-sighted.
Yes.
Or if it doesn't fix immediately, then it's not working. I need to do something else. And I think that's where what you're saying with process-based is actually, well, the process is going to take time. To quote the great Joel Embiid, trust the process.
Trust the process. Processing.
And like, I have a memory of being in elementary school, and I walked down to the end of the street with my best friends at the time. Taylor, he lived at the end of the street, and I walked down, knocked on his front door. I was like, "Hey, can Taylor come out and play?" And his mom was like, "No." And I was like, "I'm sorry. Tell me what's happening."
Say again.
She was like, "Well, he's still doing his work after school. He can't come out yet, but come back in about 30 minutes and he'll probably be done." And I was kind of like, "No," like I knocked and like we're playing. So I don't understand. I don't get what you're saying. This doesn't make sense. Like, just that very basic, like, hey, actually the first thing you do when you get home is to sit down and we get it done. Just that very healthy, like, that was something that clearly was true for them. And yeah, so I think just like that seemed like a very simple thing. And for me, in my experience, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's playtime, baby, let's go.
Sure. And like, I think it's so funny because they were holding that boundary for them, and they didn't make any. Yeah. Here's what's interesting to me, Reid, inside of this discussion, that there's moments, and I think this is so hard as parents, but we have to, this is the work, this is the job, is beginning to see, like, hey, you know what? He's got mostly A's or like mostly B's, and we're seeing success. Like, he's meeting this process, he is turning it in. Is there a moment where I can begin to step back and say, like, I think I could be more results based, right? I can begin to be like, because I was process based first, and I was really like, hey, we have to do this. And now I see you're doing it. And so I'm going to say, hey, the expectation is that you have A's and B's because we think you can achieve that. You've shown that you can. And then when we get to that C and that D, then we move. And like, here's what I'm fascinated by. What happens if you do that move and you move more to results based because they've done well, and then they fail? What is the thought process there?
That's where I have a hard time. That's where I'm like, then does it feel like I'm like wishy-washy for my kid or something, where now the boundary is going to like snap back in this way where they feel like I'm like, overreacting and I'm mad at them and all this stuff. And it's like, well, actually, like, I've just become, it's clear to us that we need to move back into back into the process of having these very consistent structures built for you, because it's helping you, learn and grow. And that's one of my jobs, is to help you learn and grow. And so I struggle with that. And like, at what age do you just say, like, actually, you got to see, because you didn't do the work? And I'm not going to do the thing like where, like, all the teachers who post it every summer, they see all these social media posts about, like, teachers being like, and I had 10 parents call me and all went over my head and went to the principal, and they said I had to give their child a B. I had to give them grades on those unturned in assignments because they have to have a B. It's like all that this sort of stuff. Like how do I know when is the right time to I don't know, to remove the scaffolding, to remove the safety net, and to say, like, actually, like, you did actually get a C, and that or a D, or whatever the grade might be, or whatever
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer. I want to be clear, because I don't have the answer for everyone's kid.
You're supposed to have the answer, Josh.
I'll make something up, and I'll just be lying. Yeah. But I think that's the thing about this moment right here, though, is that this is why it's so important for us to recognize our limitations in this, and for you guys that are listening to recognize that, like, I don't have an answer for you about how you deal with that. But here's what I will say. I think this is a good way of approaching it. Inside of our processing, like into 8th grade, into 9th grade, heading to 10th grade, am I just sitting there saying, you have to get this done because I'm telling you, or am I beginning to have those proactive, intentional conversations about what does future look like? I don't know. I don't care. That's a long time from now. But, like, no, let's start having conversations about it.
Yeah.
Let's start thinking about why the process matters. Right. Do you want to go to these schools? Do you want to go to this place? Does college matter to you? Does it not? Okay, but just understand that, like, all of the choices that we're making are right here. And so then you put up, I think there's a moment when they begin to recognize, I want to go to Georgia Tech or like whatever it is, right? And then you begin to say to them, I need you to know very specifically what that looks like for you. If you want that, here's where the opportunity would be. Mm-hmm. And then can I remove my fear of really wanting them to get that and begin to say, are you ready for that results-based kind of stuff? Because if you get a C here, buddy, that opportunity is going to be off the table.
Right.
All right. And like, that's a hard thing. And I'm not trying to say that like, I know the answer, but I am trying to say that like, what I think that takes is really leaning in and preparing and guiding and not just saying like, you do your homework. I think it's
right.
Hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. And holding tension.
Right.
With and for your child. Yeah. Wow.
Well, we talked about failure. I don't know if
30 right there.
It's a lot of fear of failure. I would love to hear from people that are listening and people from our friends and families, like how you guys approach some of these questions of fear that you have about your failure as a parent, which I think all of us work through, your kid's failure, which I think is so important and so difficult and so nuanced. And like, how can we add to that conversation that would be helpful for more people? Because I think there's more to say about that.
Yep.
Ditto. Guys,
Ditto.
Like and subscribe to this thing. Let it tell people how cool it is. Tell everyone how smart we are, how impressive we are. No, we really, really appreciate you guys when you listen and when you share it with others. So do that, and we'll look forward to, bro, on episode 10. We're going double digits.
Come on, we're almost to double digits.
Oh man. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you guys next time.